FromSoftware is one of the best game developers, if not the best. They have released games holding awards such as Most Nominated Game of All Time, Highest Rated DLC of All Time, and Ultimate Game of All Time, while also being the only developer to win Game of the Year twice. Obviously, their games are good, but nothing is flawless, and when fans start comparing them, the flaws come out. So today, we'll look at the most common complaints for each of their games and see if they're actually valid. Before we actually start, let's look at the biggest complaint for Bloodborne and Demon Souls. They remain PlayStation exclusives. This is undoubtedly a valid point. Now we come to the actual complaints, starting with Dark Souls 1. The most serious complaint is that the game feels clunky because it's old, especially when it comes to rolling. I'm sure if you've played the game, you felt that a hit shouldn't have registered during a roll, but it did. The reason for this is that in Dark Souls 1, rolling isn't enough. Positioning is just as important. This is especially clear in the Artorias fight, where you have to roll to a specific side. That's one of the reasons why the fight is so great. If you can't position yourself right, you can use shields, which are actually useful in this game. The game has fewer iframes, but honestly, that makes the overall gameplay better in my opinion. Even rolling in only 4 directions while locked on didn't bother me, so I'd say this is mostly invalid. The second complaint is the second half of the game, that the quality drops significantly because they ran out of time to finish it. I'll be honest, I completely agree. I have 2 unfinished playthroughs sitting right after Ornstein and Smo. It's not that the game becomes bad after them, but it does get worse. It's not unplayable, but I'll put this as mostly valid. One last thing you hear about is Blighttown. The problem there was low FPS on old hardware. Nowadays it's quite fine, though getting lost on the way back can still be slightly annoying. Now we move to Dark Souls 3. And yes, I remember peak Souls 2, but we'll leave the best for last. People state that Dark Souls 3 is linear, that the world is a straight line compared to the complex interconnected webs of the first 2 games. These people have clearly not played Lies of P if they think this game is linear. While it might be more linear compared to the first 2, in my opinion, it is less linear than Elden Ring, where you essentially have to beat 2 Remembrance bosses, activate a lift, and then beat 9 or 10 other bosses in a particular order. And let's be real, no one is skipping the Draconic Tree Sentinel via the portal before Fortisax's arena. In Dark Souls 3, after beating the first boss, you already have a choice. Fight the endgame bosses early or go the regular path, which also splits into 2 ways. After that, you can go to 3 different locations. I do wish you didn't need to beat all the Lords of Cinder to get the key to the archives, but otherwise, the game is not as linear as people say. I'll put that complaint in mostly invalid. Now the interesting part, gray. The game is all gray. I understand the setting is the end of the world, but nevertheless, the game just doesn't look good. I'm sorry, but again, because it fits the lore, I'll put it in almost valid. The last complaint is roll slop, or R1 spam, that the combat is quite brain dead and lacks depth. It is true that mechanics like shields, strafing, or consumables aren't as useful here. However, the combat feels smoother because rolls have more iframes, weapons have skills, and the bosses are just better on average. But I feel that with a little more balance between rolling and other mechanics, the combat would just be so much better, so I'll put this in mostly valid. Getting into Sekiro. First, I'll say this, I did not finish the game. I physically cannot. There is basically nothing you can do to get stronger if you get stuck. So if someone says the game is hard, it is hard. 100% valid, at least for some people. Another complaint is no weapon variety. If you didn't know, Sekiro has only 1 weapon. However, it does have skills and prosthetic tools to make up for it a little. I'll put it in half valid. Lastly, spirit emblems. These are the same as blood vials in Bloodborne, and yeah, it is just stupid that you have to farm for them. Totally valid. Elden Ring is my most played game of all. I'll start with my only 2 complaints, which many people seem to agree with. First, the preparation. Weapon upgrades, Dectus medallions, and flasks. It's annoying that you have to spend half the playthrough doing chores instead of actually playing. However, this only applies to replays. On a first playthrough, you don't know where everything is, so it's fine. Plus, New Game Plus exists, where you don't have to redo most of it. So I'll put it in mostly valid. The problem you face in New Game Plus is the typical open world problem, walking for too long in an empty world. This is a problem in Elden Ring. However, this is the most filled open world of any game I've played. You continue to find new things even on your 20th playthrough. Because of that, I'll put it in half valid. In this packed world, you encounter lots of reused enemies, one of the most frequent complaints. Sure, it's frustrating to find another putrid tree spirit at the end of a cave, but the game is super big and probably has more unique bosses than the whole Dark Souls trilogy combined. I think reused bosses make the game feel more alive, but I understand why some dislike it. I'll put it in mostly invalid. If I had to add anything, I'd say there's nearly no classic level design in the open world, but here I'm just ranking popular opinions. Quickly, let's look at the DLC, because since it was nominated for Game of the Year, apparently we should treat it as a standalone game. First, areas are empty. This is just not a valid critique for the DLC, because they aren't any emptier than base game areas like the mountaintops of the giants, while some of them, like Shadowkeep, have actually decent level design. Next, bosses are overtuned, have delayed attacks, spam combos, and are unfair. Definitely not valid. They aren't even that different from some Dark Souls 3 bosses. They are just more aggressive, but you also have more stamina. Shadow Tree Fragments. This is exactly the same problem as upgrades in the base game, but honestly, I'm glad they're here. You don't really need them to beat the DLC, except for first playthroughs, which allows for challenge runs later. Mostly invalid. Now, the most underrated one, Armored Core 6. Fans of this game are less toxic and complain less. Honestly, the game doesn't have many flaws, except for weapon balancing, but that's a problem in all games. I've heard people say the music isn't as good as in older games. The style has changed to be more similar to Souls music in places, but it still has tracks similar to the older games, like Steel Haze, Rusted Pride. I think the music is amazing. This is not a valid take, just personal preference. While on the topic of mechas, Metal Wolf Chaos. There is nothing to complain about. This is a flawless masterpiece. The newest title, Elden Ring Nightreign, has lots of complaints, but they all come down to one thing: there could have been more. More Dark Souls bosses, Shadow of the Erdtree weapons, more skins, etc. Many complain that due to a lack of content, the game gets repetitive after about 150 hours. While I agree the game has potential and would benefit from DLC, people don't realize this is a $40 game. It has way more content than most games at this price tag. It takes about 50 hours to beat all bosses, including Everdarks, and then you still have Deep of Night mode and character remembrances. All the new content is very high quality. I know this might make people mad, but I'm putting this in not valid. And now, getting to the best game, Dark Souls 2. Oh boy, where do I begin? The game is bad. We can divide this take into specific reasons. First, rooms with too many enemies. That is specifically a problem with Scholar of the First Sin. The base game is fine. Second, the infamous ADP, adaptability, and hitboxes. Regarding hitboxes, I think mostly it's just delayed animations and low iframes. Hitboxes don't matter much if you dodge perfectly anyway. But when it comes to ADP, I don't think anyone can defend this. It is a garbage mechanic. Valid. But without ADP, is the game really that bad? No, it's not. It might not be as good as the others in the trilogy, but it does a lot of cool, unique things right, like consumables and balance between rolling, strafing, and blocking. So I'll put the complaint, the game is bad, in mostly invalid. The biggest problem with this game for me are the PC controls. Like seriously, what the hell is this? So that's all for the games. If you don't agree with anything, be sure to leave a comment, and if you've enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing. Thanks for watching.